Next, we want to look at what's going on inside the liver. But before we do that, I want to point out where the ducts come out of the liver. Those hepatic ducts come out to join and form a common hepatic duct. At that location, we also have an artery that enters. That's your hepatic artery. And we have another vessel that enters the liver right there, and we talked about it before. This is the hepatic portal vein. You recall that blood that's been to the stomach, the pancreas, the small intestine, and the spleen, that blood, after it's been through its capillaries in those organs, that's recollected into the hepatic portal vein, and that portal vein then comes up and enters into the liver and branches out again, a second time before returning to the heart. This general region right here, where all of these vessels and ducts connect to the liver, this is referred to as the porta hepatis. P-O-R-T-A, hepatis. The portal to the liver, porta hepatis. It includes the bile ducts, the hepatic artery, and hepatic portal vein. Now to look at what's going on with the branching of the bile ducts, the hepatic artery, and the hepatic portal vein branches inside of the liver. So we've already mentioned that this common hepatic duct branches out in here and goes different directions. Inside the liver, you've got lots of branches of all of these bile ducts, bile collecting ducts, come from every direction in here. And along the same pathways taken by these bile ducts are branches of the artery, the hepatic artery. So there's a branch of the artery going this direction. Another branch of the artery will follow up this way and follow these branches of these bile ducts. So those all file right side by side, and then the hepatic portal vein also coming up in here. It follows those same pathways, right along with the arteries, right along with the bile ducts. We have the hepatic portal vein branches. They go to the same place, follow the same pathway. So it's like having three different trees growing together with all their branches following one another as they go out through the liver. They break down into smaller and smaller passages as they get out into the tissues and form groups that we call portal triads. Portal triads. And next we're going to look at some detail of the liver histology and see what happens with those portal triads. Here we have a look inside the liver, looking at the histology of a liver lobule. Remember the hepatic artery, the hepatic portal vein we were talking about a minute ago. Those are represented by this red circle and this bronze circle here. So this is the hepatic artery branch. And this is the hepatic portal vein branch. As they break down and go into the liver. So they're both carrying blood, and their blood is dumped into a common space here that's going to run between liver cells. These are hepatocytes on either side. So these are hepatocytes. liver cells. So the blood runs through this space. This is a liver sinusoid. It's the equivalent of our capillaries, the smallest passageway in that vascular system running through the liver, the hepatic sinusoid. Along that sinusoid on the walls, we have endothelial cells, so that's an endothelial cell there. Those simple squamous cells that line our blood vessels. And this large space here is referred to as a central vein. So blood travels from the hepatic portal vein branch and the hepatic artery branches, those small branches, into these small vessels called sinusoids that run through between plates of hepatocytes and empty into central veins. The central vein will collect that blood, and that blood will gather with other central veins and more veins that eventually empty into the vena cava at the back of the liver. It empties fairly directly from your large hepatic veins. Large hepatic veins empty directly into the vena cava behind the liver. And these central veins drain into those large hepatic veins. So the next thing to include in our diagram here is what happens with the bile. We know where the blood goes. It comes from these vessels into the sinusoid, central vein, and back to circulation. Between your hepatocytes are small passageways we call bile canaliculi. This is a bile canaliculus. Bile canaliculus, these tiny bile passageways, they collect the bile, and bile then eventually finds its way into small ducts that enter into this bile duct over here. Also in the liver we find another cell type, and I need another color for my other cell type. Don't have much to choose from here, but a cell type that's common along the walls and in the spaces of your sinusoids, that is a phagocytic cell. That means it's going to be engulfing foreign material. So these cells right here, these are called Kupffer cells. And that's spelled funny, Kupffer. Kupffer cells of the liver. Phagocytic cells, part of your immune defense system in there. So we're going to make a list eventually of the different physiological functions and actions of the liver tissue, but most of that physiological function happens between the endothelial cells of your sinusoid and the hepatic cells, the hepatocytes, the liver cells here. So that's when you see that interface between the blood and fluids of the blood and the liver cells themselves. It's in that little space right there, and that space has a name. That tiny little gap right in there, that's referred to as the space of Dicey. I don't have any room to write it here, but anyway. That space right there, little cavity. D-I-S-S-E. That's where most of your liver action happens, your interface between the liver cells and the fluids. The sinusoid is fairly porous and allows fluid to move out into that space. The red blood cells and white blood cells travel within that vessel, but the fluids can move through that wall fairly easily. It's fairly porous, and so in that space of Dicey you have a lot of blood fluid being exposed to the hepatocytes. The hepatocytes make bile as part of their physiological function and secrete that bile into tiny little passages that go between the cells and eventually collect and head toward the bile ducts. So the movement of fluid in the bile duct is out the movement of blood through the hepatic artery and the hepatic portal vein is in along those pathways we talked about. And that is a portal triad. The three of these together, the bile duct, the hepatic portal vein branch, and hepatic artery, right there, that makes up a portal triad. Portal triad. So surrounding the central vein, there would be several of these sinusoids that reach out like spokes of a wheel around a single central vein. And the portal triads are arranged at regular, nearly regular intervals around that central vein. And all of that together makes up what we call a liver lobule. A lobule. All of the tributaries to a single central vein and all the tissues that surround that make up a lobule within the liver. Here are some of the illustrations from your textbook showing around a single lobule the portal triads with the hepatic artery branch, hepatic portal vein branch, and the bile duct. And then you can see in the blue that represents the sinusoids that all go toward the central vein. So the blood flow would go from the periphery through the sinusoid to the central vein, and then all of these hepatocytes line those sinusoids, or on the outside of those sinusoids along there. In this picture here, there's our central vein. These are sinusoids in blue that lead through there. They show some Kupffer cells in yellow, right there and there. You see the portal triad in green. The portal duct, bile duct in green here. They show bile canaliculi, collecting the bile there. The branch of the hepatic artery shown here, the hepatic portal vein branch right here, they come together and feed blood into that same common space. These illustrations are not from your textbook, but they show some of the portal triads out around the margin here and the central vein in the middle, and the plates of hepatocytes radiate from that central vein. They have a dotted line kind of helping you to see where the perimeter of a single lobule would be within the liver. Here's another helpful illustration, the central vein in the middle, the collection of blood through the sinusoids coming in from around the margins, the hepatocytes in the red-orange color here, the portal vein, hepatic artery, and bile duct, the portal triads out around the margin. They show some Kupffer cells in yellow in that picture.